Hello, I'm Danielle with Northwest Veg, and today we're going to be doing just a little short video on how to make a vegan frittata. You can absolutely make vegan frittata with just egg. If you're looking for something that's super easy, very quickly, you can use just egg just as you would traditional chicken's eggs. But if you're looking for something that is a little bit more economical and has maybe a little bit different nutritional value than the just egg, this is a great option. It only has 4 ingredients for the base and then whatever you choose to mix in. And then also it has, it's versatile. You can mix in whatever you want. And the whole, for the base ingredients, it costs maybe $5. And you probably have everything except for maybe one of the ingredients in the house already. So it's great if you have a brunch or something where you're trying to throw something together last minute, you want it to impress, and it comes out, just you can personalize it to whatever you want. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. We're going to be doing a frittata, and the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to take 2 cups of chickpea flour. It can also be, say, garbanzo bean flour. So we're going to take 2 cups of that, and you don't have to be too precise with this recipe, which is nice. Unlike a lot of baking, since this is more of like a frittata or a quiche, we're not having to be worried about whether or not we're packing this down or anything like that. So we're going to take 2 cups of chickpea flour, and then we're going to take 2 teaspoons of salt. And you can use sea salt, kosher salt, table salt, whatever works for you. If you have some kind of seasoned salt, you can feel free to use it too. Like if you have a truffle salt or a garlic salt or anything like that. I wouldn't skimp too much on the salt just because this is helping accentuate the flavors. And then, so we're gonna go ahead and just whisk that together. And my whisk. And then we're gonna pour in our, hold on. Scarlett, you can't hang out here and scream. You waited the whole time. Okay. So then we're gonna take, we just mix that in, and then we're gonna take 3 cups of cold water and 3 tablespoons of olive oil and mix that in. So I'm just gonna add in my 3 cups of cold water, and then my 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And if you were, again, you can use seasoned olive oil for this. You could use garlic olive oil, spicy olive oil, whatever works for you, whatever is the motif that you're making for this. And then we're going to mix that together. Let me get my spoon here. And you just want to use your spoon to try to make sure that you're getting everything off the bottom. And then you're also going to want to just whisk it. So that way, we're breaking all of this up. And you cannot overmix this. So again, opposite of baking, we don't have to worry about, oh my goodness, did I mix this too much? Is it going to break down? Is it going to not rise? Is it not going to bind well? Can't overmix it. So we are able to just have this be however we want. If you wanted to put this in your stand mixer, you don't want it to get like super peaky and start having like stiff peaks or anything like that. But if it did, you could just let it calm down a little bit. But yeah, you can see it's a little foamy, but that's okay. That's totally fine. So then what we're going to do is now we're going to put in our topping, so to speak, our filling. So I've got some kale here. I'm going to mix in a good amount of kale. I'm going to make kind of a Mediterranean flavor. So I'm going to let that, make sure you don't want any of the kale to be exposed. You want it to kind of get nice and covered in here. And then I'm going to use some sun-dried tomatoes. Mix those in. And I've got some sausage I'm going to break up and put in there. So I'm using Gardein sausage, and just you want to cook it all the way through, just because once it's going into this wet batter, it could get mushy if you had kind of undercooked it. Normally, like if you're cooking on a pizza or something, you want to leave a little bit of room for that to cook because it's going to cook more as it's on the pizza. But because this is going to be in a very moist environment, it's going to be sitting with the liquid that's going to be coming out of the kale and all of the other ingredients, and then also our water, our oil, stuff like that. We don't want to make it too mushy. So even if you have overcooked sausage, field roast works really well for this. So does the Beyond Beef Italian sausages. And you're going to want the pieces to be relatively small. You don't want them to, nobody wants to have a piece of kale or sausage that just falls out as you're trying to take a bite. So you can see I've made the kale pretty finely cut. So just breaking up the sausage here. And then I think I'm going to do, you could put mushrooms in this. You'll see the final product for one that I made earlier today. I made kind of a Mexican one with some different toppings. So it's whatever you are going for, whatever works for you. So I've got my sausage. And then I'm going to put in some Italian seasoning, just a little bit. And some garlic. I've got my trusty dried garlic. I don't want to do too much with this just because it can overpower the dish. It does cook for a long time. So that gives the dried garlic a lot of time to kind of permeate. So we're just doing a little dash of that. And mix that. And then I've got some onions. Where did I hide those onions from myself? And I have some sun-dried tomato pesto, some feta cheese, and some olive tapenade that I need to use up. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. So I'm just going to throw in a couple of blops of that, make sure I get that nice and broken up. And if you want, you can use cheddar cheese. You can use mozzarella cheese. This is the olive tapenade. I'm going to put in just a little bit of this, goes a long way. So we don't want to put in too much. And we'll just make sure we get that nice and broken up, mixed in. And then I've got my onions here, and we want to make sure that the onions do get broken up. You don't want to put this in because this is not going to cook evenly. And again, I put in relatively small chunks. These onions are going to get soft in here, but they're not going to caramelize. They're not going to get sweetened. And this is a pretty sharp onion. So a little bit, again, goes a long way in each bite. So we don't want it to be one big chunk of onion. We want it to be evenly distributed. So that way every bite kind of has the opportunity to have some of this in here. You can also use dried onion in this. That works out really well. And you can also use fresh tomatoes. I use sun-dried tomatoes because I had just a little bit and it needed used up, but fresh tomatoes chopped up works great. This is such a wet recipe that you don't have to worry about having a little bit of extra moisture in here. I've used refried beans, so it's really just what your taste preference is. So mix this up. I want to make sure we're breaking up that olive and sun-dried tomato. And then the last thing I'm going to put in here is I've got some of the Violife feta cheese. And so I'm just going to break that up. Again, a little bit goes a long way. Nobody wants one big mouthful of this. So just breaking it up, putting it in. So I think this is going to have a nice, pretty diverse flavor. And then it's going to end up being really, really tasty with a lot of different healthy vegetables. And again, you know, this just has the 3 tablespoons of olive oil in it, which is important. It does help, helps kind of with the binding for this and keeping it from just being when you have that mouth feel and it doesn't just kind of crumble in your mouth, it actually gives it kind of a yolky flavor. So you're gonna mix this up. And then what we would have done is you wanna heat your oven to 500 degrees. And if you've got a cast iron skillet, you're gonna wanna put that cast iron in there for 5 minutes and then mix everything up. And you'll notice that I mixed everything. I mixed the wets together first, then I added my toppings. If I were to add the kale and onion and stuff with it before I had mixed in the water and the oil, then the powder will get stuck in these little crevices, and then you'll have little nooks and crannies of chickpea flour that didn't get cooked. So we don't want to do that. So you're going to place the cast iron skillet in the oven for 5 minutes, and that's going to get it nice and hot. So when we pour this in, it sears and it creates kind of a crust. And then you're going to bake for 15 minutes. And then after 15 minutes, you're going to go ahead and crack the door. Just check on it, and it's going to release a little bit of the steam that's in there. And then you're going to bake for another 15 minutes. And then you're going to remove and let stand for 10 minutes. Now, just similar to a cake, you're going to want to just check it with your knife when you take it out. And if it comes out really goopy and eggy, then back in it goes, because it's still, that means it needs to bake a little bit more. You want it to come out relatively clean. Now, you don't want it to be perfectly clean, because then that means it's going to be a dry frittata. You want it to just not come out looking like, this. You don't want it to look like it's got so much moisture on there. So I'm going to go ahead and stir this all up. And then I would pour this into my my pan. Or if you don't have a cast iron, you can pour this into cupcakes. You can pour this into muffin tins. So I am going to go ahead and set this aside, and I'm going to show you the one that I made earlier today. So earlier today, I made this one. This is a Mexican dish one. It's got a variety of Mexican flavors that you'll find often in Mexican food. So we've got red peppers, onion, corn. I had some soy riso that I needed to finish up. So just to let you see what the side of it looks like here, I'll actually cut a slice, and then we can see it. And again, see how nicely, like, this is because of the crust that was made with it. So you can see, there we go. You can see it's still nice and gooey. I also put some cheddar cheese in there, some Daya cheese. And we've got a nice even distribution. It's still, when I squeeze it, we can see it's got some moisture in there. But that crust cooked really well because I'd gotten the pot so hot. And then we had put the crust in here. I also wanted to go ahead and make it with muffins so that you could see how that turns out. So one tip I do have is, like, when you put in your muffin tin, if you don't have muffin cups, you can use parchment paper, but do make sure to trim it so that it looks more like this. Otherwise, the parchment paper gets very brittle and dry. And then as you're trying to unwrap it, it can get into this. But let me just show you the process of, you're going to want to carefully unwrap these. But as I said, the paper gets very brittle, so it kind of breaks apart. But you just carefully peel it and try to be mindful of any little nooks and crannies here. And here we go. Sometimes it tries to take it off the paper with the little skin, so you've got to be careful if you want it to have its integrity still. But there we go. So now we can break this open, and you can see it's got that nice moisture, cheesy gooiness. And this came together in less than an hour. And like I said, you can make it so if you were wanting to customize this, so you were having like a party and you weren't sure what flavors everybody wanted, you could make the base, and then you could have 5 different bowls and let people build their own frittata, put it in a muffin tin, throw it in the oven, you're good to go. So thanks for joining us on a how to build your own frittata for under $5 for the base for the foundation and with all natural ingredients.